Hello, everybody. This is Mike Peters of The Alarm on the Laughing Monkey broadcast.
Good evening and welcome to Laugh Monkey. We have a special guest today. Jules Peters, how are you?
Oh, hello, Shawn. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm doing okay. I'm obviously it's a very difficult question to ask anyone who's just lost the love of their lives. I was with
Right.
Mike for 39 years. I'm just over a year, and it's still unimaginable that he isn't here by my side or he isn't doing the interview with you and I'm bobbing in and out. He was the most amazing guy to be married to, so obviously I'm heartbroken, but I am learning as the weeks and the months tick by. I'm learning how to manage my grief. I practice a lot of yoga, and I find the best way is to really try and accept the grief, take it in.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to acknowledge it. Explain to people how you feel and try and be open and honest as far as you can be. Accept it and then don't let it fester. Just throw it away. Move. I feel Mike was one of the most optimistic, positive, incredible men ever, and I guess we're very similar because we met and we got engaged after 1 week. Mike had just come back from America, a long tour, and I was back from university. We collided in the high street where we'd both sort of grown up. My parents
Yeah.
had, and his parents had businesses opposite each other. So we had a pretty fairy tale relationship, really, bumping into each other, a literal collision, then a sliding doors moment, and then we met. He proposed to me at the duck pond in Prestatyn. And so all of that was so wonderful. And I think because we got to tour together, to play in a band together, write songs together, bring up our children together, that it is unfathomable to wonder how you're going to continue living your life. And of
Mhm.
course, our life together was very much influenced by cancer because Mike was
Right.
diagnosed with blood cancer when he was only 35. I was 29. And I always say, our world went from colour to black and white in the blink of an eye. So we learned quite young. We'd been raised very similarly in a small town here in North Wales. Our
Mhm.
parents were very similar types, working class, who became self-employed. So we knew how to deal with things when the going got tough. And I think I've always taken my strength from Mike, who's always stayed calm. He's always said to me, don't get too excited by the highs or too despondent by the lows. And I used to joke and say, but I like getting excited by the highs, but and Mike got excited, of course, but I think rock and roll and cancer taught Mike to just not panic.
Right.
When he was diagnosed 2 years ago, on the eve of well, days before we were due to fly to Chicago on an 8-week tour. And of course, Mike had been used to finding lumps in his neck. This is where the trouble would usually reveal itself in his glands
Yep.
here. But that time, just over 2 years ago, he found a lump. He didn't really let on to me. He went off to watch Manchester United at Wembley with our two sons. And when he came back, he went for a quick checkup at the hospital, as we would always do. And then they said, is everything else okay, Mike? And he was like, yeah, I'm feeling great. He looked brilliant. We'd literally
Mhm.
just come back from America on a family holiday. We'd gone to Aspen skiing, we'd gone to Dallas golfing. We've got two little skiers and golfers in our family. Our life was so fantastic because I don't know if you remember, but Mike had generally he'd never been on the floor with blood cancer. Our incredible health system, the National Health Service, the NHS, which we get all that treatment for free, they'd always managed to keep one step ahead with the treatment. So as they could see Mike starting to not respond to treatment, they were applying for a new trial or a new drug. And luckily for us,
Amazing.
yeah, lucky for us, for the whole Alarm family, for me and the kids, these Mike responded very, very well to all the therapies. And it was only 2 years ago. Yeah, I do want to make that point. Mike's life wasn't blighted by cancer because he was psychologically able to cope with that pressure. But he generally was able to tolerate the chemo, plan his tour dates around his treatment. And I think, if anything, we've always, because obviously I'm a breast cancer survivor of 10 years this
Yes.
year. Yeah, we were able to see that always try and remember who you were the day before you got diagnosed. And like Mike says, don't panic. There's lots of treatments out there now. And cancer is something that's, it's our body just sometimes misbehaving.
Hmm.
We saw it as a weird gift, and that might sound strange, but
No, it
I think
doesn't. It doesn't. Because
yeah,
I've just thought
I
about that
think it
too.
just yeah, it just made us it made us live in the present. Again, that yogi philosophy, we very much realize that just right here, right now is all that counts. And try not to worry about tomorrow. And you can live a really good present life. So uh, we, of course, with the cancer diagnosis, created our foundation, Love, Hope,
Right.
Strength, which was a line from an alarm song called Strength. Give me love, give me hope, give me strength. And yeah, again, uncanny really that Mike wrote that song as a young man. And little did he realize how important those lines would be, not only to him, to me, but to all people out
Everyone, to
there.
everyone.
Yeah, that we encourage everybody. We thought we don't want cancer to make our life miserable, so we're going to create a
Right.
foundation. We're going to do exciting things. We're going to go to Everest and Kilimanjaro and take people with us and encourage people to try and stay fit. And most importantly, make people go and sign up to the bone marrow
Right.
registry where
And
they have
so,
the
yeah, and people
opportunity.
do that also too. I mean, to interject while we're talking about it. Please, people go and do that. Sign up. I mean, go over, check out this and support this. This is a very important program to keep
Yeah.
going, you know.
Thank you, Sean. Well, Mike, and as I said, on the eve of this big American tour, he found the lump. He went to the hospital. Our cases were packed. We were heading over with a massive crew and band for an 8 week American tour that we tended to do every single year, apart from COVID. We're very privileged to come to America every year. And they
I
turned
was
around and
ready to meet you two. Me and my wife were
yeah,
ready
that
to
would have
meet you
been
two.
nice.
It was set up.
Well, you never
We
know.
were.
You never know. We may come back because I don't know if you've heard, but by a very surreal twist of fate, Evan, who is our youngest son, he was
Mhm.
18 when Mike passed, the biggest alarm fan you'll ever meet, alongside with Dylan, our 22-year-old.
Of course.
But Evan is now singing and leading the alarm onto the next chapter.
Oh,
I did
wow.
not see this coming, but he performed at the funeral. He came to me and said, "Mum, I want to play at Dad's funeral." He played a song called Wonderwall by Oasis because that's the
Yep.
song that Mike taught Evan how to play. And also it was the song back in 95 when we also came to America that Mike took as his sort of little anthem to
Yeah.
say that he was going to get through this. And it's just evolved. When Mike was very, very ill in the last few weeks before his death, he had made me launch 4 shows for transformation in our pub. The pub that hilariously Mike thought was a very bad idea for me to buy. And this is the most optimistic, incredibly forward alpha male thought that buying the pub was a bad idea. And so I didn't involve him in the negotiation, apart from the
But you
fact
did
that
it because you felt like it was a challenge, right? You're like, well, now it feels like a bigger challenge.
yeah, I mean, it was weird for me really, Sean, because we'd always been so in sync about everything. And
Hmm.
so it shocked me that he didn't think it was a good idea. I think it kind of went against his whole punk rock sort of it's
Right.
for him it probably represented being something of a tie. We'd never really had a tie. We'd never been in the normal working world. Not that he was ever going to be pulling pints, but anyway, the kids were still at high school and I just had this passion. It's opposite a waterfall. It's in the village where Mike was born, but
Hmm.
subsequently it's become a bit of a mecca. It's like Gracelands. This last few days I've had 2 people from Seattle, 2 people from Los Angeles, people from right across the UK that just come in through the door to come and pay their respects to Mike. So it's a beautiful thing. If when you have to lose the love of your life, the alarm community are helping me and the children unbelievably to for us to keep our head above water. They come in, they tell us all their memories about Mike, and so now with Evans being able to perform, he looks quite a lot like Mike. He sounds like Mike. I never ever could have imagined anything more surreal. So much so that I sometimes think maybe right now I'm in some bizarre dream, and I'll wake up tomorrow and Mike will still be alive, and I'll say, I had this very weird dream that you died and our youngest son took over as you. Um, but yeah, the gathering is an event that we hold every single year. where alarm fans come from all over the world to Wales. And it was the idea, we've been running it for 33 years, and the idea was that we would stay at home for a change and the alarm fans would go on tour. And guess what? The alarm fans loved it, loved the idea. So that this is why it's carried on being successful. It's by the fans, for the fans, and Mike and I loved it. Anyway, on Mike's deathbed, we were able to bring him home. He had 2 days at home with us, all extremely traumatic because Mike, being such a perfectionist, wanted to give me instructions. So he wanted me to continue with the gathering, which
Mhm.
I looked at him and said, "Oh, darling, how do I continue the gathering without you?" These very, very difficult conversations.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I can't imagine.
Oh, I cannot begin to explain, and I want to talk about it more as I'm doing a lot around grief and trying to help others following in my footsteps, as I did have done with breast cancer. But he basically said, you can do the gathering. The alarm fans run the gathering, and you've got Evan now who can sing at the gathering. So this was a year ago. In January, we had the gathering, and I'd be honest, I just felt like packing it all in. The charity, the gathering, closed down the alarm.com. But it lasted for about 48 hours because Evan came to me and said, I can do it. I can do it. So I said, oh, darling, that's a big task, to go out on stage and play for 2 hours like Dad used to do. So Billy Duffy from the Cults, Ian McNabb from Icicle Works and Big Country
Yeah.
all reached out to me and said, we'll come and play at the gathering to help pad it all up. So I was there with my notepad trying to figure out how we would lay it all out. And it felt like a massive responsibility. And then Evan walks in, just the way Mike used to do, with like full of fortitude and vigor. And he said, "Oh, that's really nice of Billy and Ian and Bruce, but
Yeah.
I've already sorted my set list. I know what I'm doing." So next minute, set list. It was 40 years this year since the alarm played UCLA in Los Angeles, and it was the
Yeah.
first ever satellite broadcast. So Evan decided to reproduce the set list of that day 40 years ago, and he played that with the full band, with me included, because obviously I've always been the keyboard player for
Right.
a long, long time. So there I am playing Walk Forever by his side with Evan stood in the same spot that Mike would normally, not for the faint-hearted, Shawn, and the entire audience were in tears. But on the Saturday night, he pulled off the most incredible 2 hour set list, the ultimate alarm set list, because Evan and Dylan have grown up on tour in America on the tour bus. Um, being at every single gig, being at the side of the stage, helping to roadie, packing the gear out, selling the merchandise, realizing that alarm fans would like to say, we'll give you $20 if you go back and get Dad's autograph in the tour bus. So Evan just said to me, Mum, it's just in my DNA. So this is the situation we're in now that uh,
Still
I
amazing to go out and perform. I mean, that's like on
yeah,
stage is like just like tr something on a totally different level of a performance. So
I
it's
know
insane to
it's
do that. I mean,
crazy.
it's powerful.
Yeah,
I
it's
got the
crazy. And
chills just thinking now.
well, the alarm fans have been incredible and welcoming, and we also all the different bands. So Big Country invited Evan to support them on their most recent tour. So we've not long come back from Scotland, where Evan supported just him and his acoustic guitar, and then we're just about to announce the Alarm Big Country going on tour together later this year, November in the UK, around a lot of big venues. So there was me thinking I'm hanging up my touring bag, but it seems like it couldn't be further from the truth. So I like to think that
Wow.
Mike is looking down and happy that his final wishes, he really wanted Transformation to be released far and wide. So thank you for interviewing me about the album. And I do want, obviously I understand, like you just explained, people are not quite sure how to approach me but I'm very open about my grief and about what happened in the last few months, because I want to explain that this is not a sad album at all. And Mike didn't write it as his swan song, because up until the last 2 days of his life, Mike honestly believed so strongly that he was going to get through it. I could see that the story was developing in a different way, but I couldn't
Mhm.
I couldn't acknowledge that. Mike needed me
Right.
to believe, and he believed that he was going to get through. So when he wrote this album, Transformation, it was all about him getting through to a cancer-free life because he was having a process called CAR T therapy, which
Mm.
is a little bit like a stem cell transplant. But in Mike's case, he had 100 milliliters of blood transferred to the United States of America, a 28-day process, returned, and then reabsorbed into his bloodstream with the intention and the hope that his cancer would be obliterated for good. He'd never had the opportunity. He'd always lived with blood cancer because Mike had never had a stem cell transplant because it's a bit of a juggling act with blood cancer as listeners who've had an experience with blood cancer will understand. And really, if you can hold off a stem cell transplant, sometimes that is the best route. So Mike was very fortunate that he didn't have to have a transplant because as much as it can be successful and then you become cancer free, there's also lots of complications that can occur. So when he went in to have CAR T, he was 65. He'd been living for 31 years with blood cancer. And the the blood cancer, I don't know if people understand, but he 2 years ago, his leukemia transformed, there's the word again, transformed into a high grade lymphoma called Richter's syndrome, which is a very rare and a very aggressive lymphoma. I had no idea that this was even possible. I had no idea that leukemia could transform into a lymphoma. But unfortunately, Richter syndrome has very poor prognosis. So Mike was incredibly brave to just block all of the prognosis criteria and statistics out there and just focus on his belief that he was going to get through. His doctors and nurses have said that they've never seen such a focused, positive patient. We really, Mike and I never really had a conversation about him dying until those last 2 days when we brought him home, at which point he was a very, very poorly guy. And all he wanted to do, you have to laugh, it's a bit of a black comedy. I had Evan with his feet upon the bed and one of Mike's guitars
Yeah.
playing a medley of alarm songs, with me looking at Evan going, how do you know these songs? With Mike drifting in and out of consciousness. But Mike was always about the record and the music and on the different formats. He was a massive vinyl collector. So even in those last few hours, he was telling me, keep the alarm going, keep the gathering going, and make sure you get transformation right. The responsibility, he was able to pull his computer out and point to all the different areas in his laptop where all the artwork was, which he prepared in those last few months in from the Christie Hospital in Manchester. The album cover is a PET scan of Mike's body, and
Yeah.
I find it hard to look at, but he put it as the cover because he just believed it was going to be a miracle story that CAR T had saved his life. So this album, I say to everyone, please don't stick it on and feel upset and sad that Mike's no longer with us. Of course, we all feel that sadness, but we're the generation that's getting older. Like Mike said, we're all going to die at some point. He didn't think he was going to go then, like I say. He was very reassuring to me, but we are heading into, late 50s, 60s. Our loved ones are passing away. And I think it's important to have healthy conversations. This is why I'm able to speak to you today without crying. Only a few hours ago, I've been put some poor guy phoned me about a work situation, and I happened to pick up, and then I promptly just lost the plot and burst into tears. It's healthy to cry, but at the same time, I feel like my way of dealing with it is to just try and be a bit resilient, to just try and have that stiff upper lip. I know
Mm.
that's not for everyone. I'm certainly not suggesting it's for everyone, but it's the way I operate better. I've got shit to do, I joke that I'll sleep when I'm dead. So I've turned the pub into, it's a bit like a holiday camp. Every single night there's something on. It was line dancing last night. It was like United States inside the red last night. I've got yoga tonight. I've got salsa and bachata tomorrow, quiz on the Thursday. DJ
Jeez.
night on the Friday. Yeah, Mike used to come in and DJ in the pub every Friday night. So I know that he would be happier to know that I'm just living my life to the full. I've got a lot to do. And so getting upset and crying doesn't really fit in with trying to stay positive.
Yeah.
And it's about practicing gratitude over sorrow. I really, I'm only 59. It's way too young to lose your life partner. But look, none of us know what our tomorrows are going to bring. So I remind myself, don't get sad, Jules. Those 20 years that you think you've lost were never mine to have anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, the last year, but I know deep down that me, the boys, my mum and dad are still alive. They're in their mid 80s. I've got an incredible circle of friends and family. I'm worldwide, like I say, I'm very open on my socials and the Alarm family in particular. I put a post up once a day and they all message me and I interact with them. And the Alarm family keeps me going. We've got a massive shared history. I'm 59 and I met Mike when I was 19. So I've gone to gigs, been in the audience and been on stage because I never wanted to be in the Alarm, by the way. Mike forced me kicking and screaming. I'm like, oh God, no, I don't need this in my life. The Alarm fans will kill me. Why would I want to do this? But he was like, I need a keyboard player. And, I guess I was cheap and I'd played piano all my life. So he said, oh, if you're not going to do it because you worry what
Cheap,
people
you mean
say,
affordable, affordable.
affordable. Mm.
I
Sorry, I haven't given you a chance to ask me any questions.
no, no, actually, I've first of all, thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic because I don't think I could have gotten to that. I want to say a couple things. Number one
Yeah,
is, so when I got the album, I was like, oh, it's gonna be so hard to listen to. And I want to say this to the fans because this is exactly what you're at. So I've heard it, and it's May 29th, right? I'm the worst with dates. May 29th it comes out.
yeah. 1 year since Mike's funeral.
Right. Okay, even perfect. So I know it's on the same date. It's amazing. It's a very uplifting, powerful album. Actually, it's probably even more back to return roots, even on some level, than some of the other recent albums. That's my opinion.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah,
Um, but I mean I like the other albums too because I've got them. We have now, like I told you, we have all. But to me, there's something about it just feels very much the soul, very raw rock and roll. But it's very inspiring. It's very upbeat. And I was waiting to get sad.
yeah.
And I didn't. And I felt guilty.
Oh,
I'm like,
good.
why does this album make me so happy? Like, because
Oh, I'm
you
pleased
know,
to hear that.
it's a brilliant album and it truly is. It is an upbeat album and it's a good rock album. He did a good album and it's got a lot of good lyrics in it that mean a lot more than just throwaway words.
Oh,
So
thanks
that's
for
what I want
saying
to say about that to the album, to the people. That's to that. I also want to say, I think as an outsider, it feels like you probably lived with your relationship, the time you spent together, and how in the moment you were probably 80 years compared to somebody, your 20 years, and
that.
probably some other person's
Oh,
80 years. It feels like you realize really engulfed, you
oh,
know what I mean?
thank you,
Appreciate what you
Stuart.
had, you know,
That's
and
lovely
that's
of
not
you
to
to
make,
say.
you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? They feel better. You ever hear the expression, they go, how come dogs don't live that long? This is really
I
because
love
they, you know,
it.
because they forgive, they have no anything. They just love you 100%. So
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
all happens. So there's no other baloney around them. So it's
Oh, I
all just
love it.
intense love.
I
So I
love
guess what
it.
I'm saying is, it
What
feels
is
like
it? Happy dogs,
no,
happy
it's
dogs.
just no, just how why do dogs? How come dogs just don't live, forever? They live like 15 years ish, whatever, however long they
Yeah,
live, whatever. But
yeah.
because their love is so intense, and there's no other garbage with
Oh,
it. There's no guilt. There's no anger, resentment. It's just
I love
pure
it.
love with nothing else.
Yeah,
And
it's a lovely
so
analogy.
right. So to you guys, it feels like maybe your 20 years was, it's still too short. That's going to make it feel better. But it feels like it was so much more intense than a lot of people
Yeah, I'll
ever
take
can
that.
touch on. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I just mean as an outsider, I don't mean to take away from anything by any means. I don't. And
no,
the other
not
thing
at
is, I
all.
think, is a kind of a question, but more of a thing. Do you think the reason why you functioned in this, and I think for people that outside don't realize this, because we all have things in our life that are stressful or at a certain level. I have a thing in my life. It's not medical, but that people are like, I don't know how you deal with it. I'm like, you and me and my wife just deal with it because you just deal with it and you have a different heightened level of things in your life. It doesn't make it go away or make it better, but you learn to perform your life on a different level and you can still be happy. And I think that's the point you're trying to say, that it wasn't all doom and gloom because of the
No,
cancer,
not.
but you learn, right? Is that how you guys learn to function on a different
Yeah,
level of
yeah.
what's going on. It doesn't take away from it. It's still there, but you learn
Yeah,
to
like I
laugh
say,
about it and move
I
on.
think a cancer diagnosis, like I've always said initially, when you're dealing with the traumatic nature of one minute you're living life without cancer, next minute you've got cancer, it's hard to get your head around it, of course. But I think and life, like I said, goes from black and white, goes from color rather to
Mhm.
black and white, and it's very hard to let the color seep back in.
Right.
But when the color does seep back in and you've calmed into your new situation, I think it makes it even more transcendental. And I think that's possibly how life became for us, that we anything, and of course, there was always stuff that happens and people that
Of
get on your
course.
nerves and irritating things, that's life,
That's
we're all
that's life.
human. Yeah, but I think in general our litmus paper test, if you like, was, oh, actually everything's fine, because compare it to the day when we both went in and found out that Mike had cancer when we were kids.
Mhm.
It was like, oh, it's nowhere near as upsetting or stressful as that. Oh,
Right.
so it's fine today. So I think we had that yeah, I like the dog analogy. We were both a bit like two golden retrievers. I've got a golden retriever called Ziggy Stardust because obviously Mike was a
Oh,
massive
I'm a
Bowie
big
fan.
fan.
And I like that thought. Yeah, I think Mike's consultant came to see me not long after Mike died, and he said, Jules, we all born with a certain amount of energy, and Mike just expended so much energy all the
Yeah.
time, a bit like you're saying, and he was very free. He was
It's just
very
pure.
calm.
Everything was pure. It was just so pure that came
Yeah,
out
he
of him.
barely lost his temper. I mean, you wouldn't want to cross him if you really did something to offend him. But in general, he wasn't a pushover. But in general, he had a very calm demeanor. He was calm as a father, as a husband, and he took that calmness into the last few months of his life. He wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't. He actually didn't really think that he was going to die, and so we didn't have the conversation about the funeral or where would he be buried, or
Oh,
I
really?
knew that I knew that we didn't want to go to the local crematorium. We'd always joked about that, but it turned out that we had the best funeral of all. We will be showing it again, which sounds weird, but it really isn't. If anyone who's watched the funeral on YouTube, because we were able to bring in a big screen and we broadcast it to the Alarm family worldwide. We
Mhm.
had 4,000 people turned up into our little village. The police closed down the roads. He had a funeral for a proper hero that he was. And I think that brought me and my immediate family a lot of comfort. And we had people who came from all over the world to deliver a eulogy. I didn't want one long, extensive eulogy. So we
Right.
all it was a bit like speed dating, and we all just spoke about Mike for a couple of minutes, I think was what we said. And so it gave the true breadth of, the man who wrote 68 Guns, but also the man that went to Parliament to campaign on behalf of our charity, Love, Hope, Strength, to the man who wrote a ballad like Walk Forever by His Side. There were so many facets to Mike. He wasn't just that punk with the spiky hair
No.
who blasted out 68 guns. There was so much more to him than that. And I think the funeral, really, really showed the true colours of the man. So look, there's a lot to be grateful for. And in the last 2 weeks before Mike died, he was released out of hospital for a few days. And he asked me to take him to the beach house, which was about 45 minutes drive.
Mhm.
And we drove. I like to explain that I drive a Mustang, a Ford Mustang, which all originates from our trip to Los Angeles when I was 50, so 9 years ago. And Mike took me to Los Angeles after I finished my treatment for breast cancer. So I lost all my
Mhm.
hair, was pretty brutalized with my breast surgery, had radiotherapy, burnt to a crisp. I was I was not a pretty sight. I looked, no disrespect to anyone in their 80s, but I looked like I was in my 80s, 90s, and struggling to regain my femininity, grateful to be alive, loads of emotions swirling around. But Mike was like, right, we're continuing with our plans, and that's to go for a month to California. And I did not want to go. I wanted to stay at home. And so it's those kind of moments where I try and take that into how I'm dealing with my grief. Like today, I really didn't want to step out the door, but I forced myself. And then by stepping out the door, communicating with other people, by the time I came back in to do the interview with you, I felt a
Mhm.
million times better than if I'd have
Oh, good.
stayed. Yeah, good job really for you, Sean. Otherwise, I could have just been sobbing through this interview. Um, but when we went to California, I was 50 while I was there, and Mike asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said I'm not interested in anything. I have all that I need. My two lovely boys, because Mike and I had lots of fertility treatment for our boys, which is a whole other interview, and
Wow.
and I said, you know what? I'd like a pair of cheap roller skates because back in the 80s, I used to roller skate around the auditoriums
Yeah.
on the American tour. You know, we toured with Bob Dylan and in the big venues, and it was great, nice smooth surfaces for my skating. So 9 years ago, I wake up on my birthday in Venice Beach. We were privileged enough to go every year for a month to Venice Beach in Easter and every year in the summer to New York. So very, very grateful for all those beautiful long sunny days that Mike was able to be a real proper father and have loads of time with
Yeah.
Dylan there. So feel very lucky for that. And but Mike said, well, I tell you what, you roller skate and I've got a meeting. And I thought this is what Mike was like, workaholic, a meeting on my 50th birthday. So he said, you skate along Venice Beach and I'll meet you a bit further down the promenade. Well, skating at 50 compared to when I was like in my 20s was a whole other ball game coming along Venice Boulevard. And in the distance, I could see Mike leaning over a white Ford Mustang convertible. I'm a real car person, you know, and I thought, gosh, I wonder who he's meeting, you know. So I skated
Mhm.
closer and he just turned around and he said, your carriage awaits. Take your skates off and get in. And he drove me me and the boys in the back, drove me open top up to Malibu Cove for my 50th birthday, just for a nice little few beers and a lunch
Yeah.
on the beach. A memory that lives with me forever, and I've thought about a lot in the last few months. But when we came home, he said, he used to call me Trixie Vixie. Trixie, you need a Mustang when we get back to Wales. And so I said, I can't drive a big Mustang around our tiny little village. It's only got 2,000 people in it. Anyway, one day he said that he'd gone off on a job, but he'd gone off to on the train to the south coast of England and he'd bought a second-hand Mustang and he drove it all the way like 8 hours from the south coast of England
Wow.
and phoned me and he said, come to the top of the drive. I've got a surprise for you. I had no clue. And he pulled up at the top of the drive in this black Ford Mustang with the top down, blasting out AC/DC. And it's the car that I still drive today, 9 years on. And it's the car that I hope I will drive for the rest of my life.
Forever.
But that day, there is a link to transformation because he wanted me to drive him open top in the Mustang and he blasted out Transformation. Mike, once an album was done, Mike never retrospectively listened to an Alarm album. It was like, it's done, it's handed over to all of you, all of the Alarm
Really?
family.
Like never like before a tour to learn some old
No,
songs or anything?
no, never.
Okay.
You know, unless he maybe needed to, but he never really had to check out a song because he'd written it
Yeah,
in the
well,
first
yeah, yeah, I
place.
guess if,
So,
like for musically, I know
yeah,
sometimes an artist goes, I haven't played it for a while. It's an album, three
yeah.
albums back. I just need to hear a part. Okay.
Yeah, not really. I mean, you know, maybe a few, but generally it was just
Yeah, okay,
here
I
in
get
his
it. Yeah.
DNA. Really hard to explain. And because it's a good point, because how he could remember all the lyrics, I'll never know to this day.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I hear so much for an artist to go. It's not so much like of a vanity thing. It's like I kind of forgot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. We're getting
There you
older.
go. They're like, oh, did I write that already? Is it stealing
He's
for
like a
myself?
computer. Yeah.
Right.
He's like an alarm computer that you could just
Right.
um anyway, we drove top down. He wanted an ice cream. And he was so fragile, bless him. And I was so scared, but he wasn't. He was excited. And he turned it up so loud that I could barely hear myself drive. And I didn't dare ask him to turn it down. And
Wow.
he was like, I'm going on tour to America. He wanted to come to America just by himself with his big guitar, his pedal board, where he could just, he'd done it back in
Yeah.
around 2012, but he was very serious about it. And because leading up to, you know, in the last year of his life, Mike played 50 shows with Big
Wow.
Country. And so there's a strong connection there between Big
Yeah.
Country and the Alarm. He recorded the album. So he had a very, very fulfilling artistic and creative last year. And the reason why I want everyone to try and remember this image of Mike in the car, blasting it loud, air drumming, air guitar, happy as anything because he was excited about coming on tour around the world and he felt like his life cancer-free was beckoning loud and clear. So the album is a celebration. It's nothing to be sad about. So please
Yeah,
remember that when you blast it
It
out
is.
loud and proud.
I agree. It's very positive, and I think for you, you've it's not the alarm anymore. I mean, Evan can be the singer in a band and perform and support it, but the alarm is so much bigger now with the foundation and I mean, you're just
Yeah.
in, you're leading something bigger. Is what
Oh,
happens.
that's sweet to
You
say.
guys were, working on it together. You're right there with him, but now, you're leading on, and it's
Yeah,
bigger
I'm
than you.
the
It's bigger, but
matriarch.
you are, and but it's
Yeah.
bigger than anybody. That's the
Oh,
whole
that's
point.
beautiful to say. Yeah. Well, next year, Sean, Mike was full of plans. So he was returning to Everest because 20 years ago he led the foundation, Love, Hope, Strength, to Everest. And we had Slim Jim from the Stray Cats and Glenn Tilbrook from Squeeze, amongst
Well,
many other musicians. But I actually, it was one of the few tracks that I didn't go because I had just given birth to Evan Peters.
hmm
So I had to stay at home and look after the boys. So Mike said, right, it would be really lovely to return, lead another trek, but this time go as a family. So guess what? Next year, December of
See,
2027, we are leading a hike, me, Dylan, and Evan. And Evan takes on board the guitar like Dad used to do, and Dylan will play a bit of drums and make a few speeches, and they kind of lead the way, a nice combo of their father. And that is how we all get through, I think. Like Mike said, we are all going to die. Don't be afraid of discussing that. Make your will, maybe leave a positive message for people so that it's not traumatic for them at the end. And I raise this to be positive, to we are on a one-way ticket. And I think, especially in the UK, my experience, my personal experience is maybe with less religion in our lives. Years ago, you would tend to go to church every Sunday. I own the pub next to a chapel, and Mike and I converted the chapel. It became Mike's recording studio and our live
it was
room.
his church. It was his church.
Yeah, it was his church. Yeah. And now he's buried directly opposite the church and the pub. But you walk through the graveyard when you obviously go to visit Mike. And it struck me that because I don't go to church, yoga is my own little practice, but for a lot of us en masse, certainly in my village, we don't go to church. Whereas when I was little, I used to go to church more. And
Right.
by going to church, you tend to walk through the graveyard and you see the graves and you see death, and it is almost normalized. And whereas now I think so many of us don't see the graves, and
Mm.
death is so much more difficult to adjust to. But this is
It's
for a
interesting.
whole other
No, I never thought about
conversation.
that. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think there are so many of us dealing with grief, and grief will never go away. And I understand that my grief is the price that I pay for having loved Mike so much. But I'll take that. I wish more than anything that he was here chatting to you, and he was going to pop in now and do you fancy a cup of tea and all the amazing stuff that I love doing with Mike every day. And that is very, very difficult to adjust to. But I'm not the only one. There's so many of us in life learning how do you lead your best life without the love of your life? That's the big question. And I think it's by staying positive and by being grateful for all that you've had and not
Yeah.
for feeling sad for all that you're not going to
I
have.
mean, it sounds great. I couldn't imagine myself. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if I could be as strong as you. I mean, I think the only thing I've ever heard people say is it just hurts less and it feels more comforting in a way, like you understand it
Yeah,
more.
I
And
think it has to
I don't
soften.
know.
Otherwise, I mean, luckily I've made a transition, that word, transformation, transition, up until only the last few months. The physical feeling of grief, wow, I had no idea. I mean, my girlfriends tease me. It's changed. It's been an overwhelming sickness. It's been like a
Mm.
serpent sitting heavy at the bottom of my stomach. At the moment, it's lifted. It's as I feel like the snake has come out of me and slithered away because it's like seasickness. It almost disables you that you can barely stand up. And that has engulfed me really for a year. I'm hoping, like you say, I think it has to get gentler. That's the way humanity survives, that it gets gentler. It will never
Yeah.
leave you, but it will hopefully soften and get
That's what
gentler.
people say. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I hope if, if I can be as strong in my point,
You will
as
be.
you are, in the time, if it ever comes to me, but it's something I've heard. I've always wondered myself. I'm like, I don't know. So I have a lot of respect for you for just handling this, but you're also taking on, this the alarm and everything about the alarm is more than just it's just not a rock band. It's just so much more. Everything it's done and your own battles, and you've looked by an example of sharing your fear and everything else with
Mhm.
cancer, and cancer scares everybody. It scares me all the time. Every time you have a lump on your thing, every time your stomach hurts, you're like, because we've all had
Yeah.
cancer in our family. It's like my lump, I have a sore throat. I'm like, nope, it's cancer. Oh my God. And you're all nervous, and I'm not even trying to,
Yeah,
it's funny you say it, but it's not even like making light of it. Like everyone's always terrified of that. You know what I mean?
I know.
So
Yeah.
you guys have gone on to it. You've fought it and he's fought it and you've fought it for
Uh,
31 years and lived a complete fulfilling life at a level of, you know, it's like album was up to a 10, it goes up to 11. But it's a good 10. Like you guys have always gone up that one extra above and still done it. So, that's a nice beacon for people to kind of push through to be like, all right, you know what? Let's try it at this level. I want to thank you for sharing this. I said, I'm sure it's
Oh,
not
thank you,
easy.
Sean.
I didn't, like I said, I didn't know myself.
It's
I didn't
it's been
want
a
to.
success because I haven't cried. So, well, oh, I shouldn't say that. Sounds like I'm anti-crying. Everyone listening, I'm so not. Have a good cry when you need to. I think I joke with quite a few.
I
I
almost
know.
wanted to cry listening to you. I'm like fighting back the tears.
Oh, bless you. I laugh with I know a lot of widows, and we
Yeah,
all gravitate towards each other. We're really good fun, by the way. But we joke that, we've got enough to deal with without puffy eyes from all the
yeah.
crying. So I tried in the funeral, I spoke at the funeral and I said, it was something actually that Mike had said when his mum died and about her just being in the other room. And
Mhm.
so I said that in my eulogy. I have quite a black sense of humor, and so many people say to me, he's just in the other room, and I do swear quite a bit, but I've really not sworn on this. But I laugh now because I really don't feel like he's in the other room, and I come into
No,
the house that we've shared for 37 years, 38 years, and that's what I found the hardest because when I walk in, I in the beginning I'd go, "Hey Mikey, I miss you. I love you. Show show me a sign." And then there was yeah, you gotta laugh because I so would have loved like a feather or something, like in the movies too, and there was no sign. And so I was coming in every day, desperate for a sign, and then it was making me upset. So I decided that actually what I said at the funeral about him just being in the other room made no sense or comfort to me because he's not in the other room. I really wish he was.
maybe can I offer an alternative suggestion? If
Yeah, go
people
on.
believe it, and if he was the other room, maybe he knows you so much that he knows if he gave you a sign, it would make it that much harder for you to move on and move forward.
Yeah, maybe. There you
And he
go.
wants, and he's like, Jules, I need you to move forward and be happy. I don't
Yeah,
want
I
you to keep
know.
being sad. Like, that wouldn't be
Yeah.
beyond a kindness of him to be that forward,
Yeah,
all
he's
right?
there. So he's
He's
there with the
there.
feather, Sean, and then he thinks, no, I won't send that
No, I'm
feather.
not. I can't distract her. She's got stuff to do. She has to move
Yeah,
on. I can't have
yeah.
that. She needs happiness.
Yeah, I
Maybe,
think you're
maybe,
right. No, and
I don't
you
know.
know what? I do enjoy the way men counsel me because there's a lot
Because we're
more.
idiots. We have nothing. We have nothing.
No, you're not. You're not. You say some really good things. Ian McNabb, I don't know if you're familiar with Ian. He's a bit of
Mhm.
a mate of mine, and he makes me laugh from the Icicle Works, and he
Yeah.
played at the Gathering, and then he understands my grief. He lost his mum, and he's been very, very open about his male grief, if you like, because him and his mum lived together, and
Mhm.
so he really understands what that feeling is like when you get low. It's different, obviously, because it's his mum and it's my life partner, but so he checked in on me a few weeks ago and I was feeling a bit low and I told him straight about how I was feeling and he came back with one message: don't be a pussy. And which made me laugh straight away. And then he went, Mike would not like you wallowing. And I don't wallow, you know. I felt like give me a break. Give me 10 minutes to just feel really, really miserable and sorry for myself. My husband's not here, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? The tough love really worked because I was like, I'm just going to bounce that back. I'm going to be resilient. And then when I get back onto that level, which is my normal way of living my life, but it was good to hear it from someone else to say, Mike just didn't like people to wallow. He was like, if you're not happy with your life, if you're not happy with your situation, smash it all down, build it back up. Don't be afraid if you're here to smash it all down and start again. And
He lived
so,
it by leaving what the first person. It was amazing when he left the first alarm time and went down. He just
yeah,
walked away. I mean, so that no
he
one
did.
can like walk away from that and be like, he lived what he said. So you can't doubt.
Yeah.
It's not
No,
just
you're
words.
right. He walked away from the thing he loved most in the world because it was like, well, if you don't want me to write the songs, if you don't want me as the singer, then you can have it. You
Yeah.
can
That's the most
continue.
powerful statement anyone can ever make. When I saw that, I'm like, that guy means what he says,
Oh,
and that's
yeah,
it. That's
yeah, you're right.
that's symbolically that's what I saw. I was like, wow, that is just
Yeah.
I don't know who could do that. I mean, very few people could stand it and
Yeah,
their
I
relief.
agree with you. He's really demonstrated that sort of power all through his life, and you know, to step away from the alarm at 91 off stage at Brixton Academy, that was a very, very difficult thing to do, to just start all over again. But Mike was never afraid. He was like, here's the name, here's the band, you go and do your thing. But
Yeah,
as it turned out, nothing ever did happen, you know, because Mike
it
came back,
didn't.
he started all over, and then by the year 2000, the alarm name was kind of um, introduced back to him when he went on tour
Right.
with Big Country. But Mike wasn't bothered. He liked being Mike Peters. You know, there were no rules. He could do it his way. And I know when he first went to London, 1980, he'd left North Wales to make it with the band
Mhm.
hard, obviously. And when he was on the tube on the subway, and John Lennon was killed 1980, and next minute all the broadsheets were covered with all the unbelievable
Right.
headlines and all the incredible music of John Lennon. Both Mike and I big Beatles and Lennon fans, and Mike had the sort of confidence, I think, and the bravery, if you like, he says in his autobiography, so it's not me saying it, that he heard all the songs, he heard Lennon's songs, and he thought, my songs aren't good enough. I need to go back to Wales, smash it all down, and build it back up again. So he left London, came back to Wales, got a job to earn some money so that they could go back into a recording studio in Manchester, and he rewrote and re imagined all the songs. Now, most people would have stayed in London, wouldn't have had the
Yeah.
fortitude, yeah, to come back. And that's how he always was with cancer. You know, when he got diagnosed with Richter syndrome, he didn't flinch. He just said, I'm gonna get through it. And the doctor, on the day he began CAR T, his doctor said in front of us both, Mike, you have 1% chance of this succeeding. And Mike just got off the bed and stood up really slowly and just matched him eyeball to eyeball, this Egyptian doctor, and said, I'm going to be in that 1%.
So you
Without
say
like,
I got a chance.
yeah, yeah,
That's
he did.
fantastic.
Yeah, that's what it was like being married to him. And you know, that's I take the strength and remind myself to don't be afraid of anything, you know, just believe in yourself, try and do the right thing, and keep on marching on and
Oh,
moving
I
forwards.
am proud to have spoken to you and had the time with you today. And I hope we can talk again down the road and hopefully get to see you and your son
I'd love that,
perform.
John.
I like that.
Oh, but you
You
know
owe me a
what?
show. You owe me a show.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, you can always come and see me in Wales. Remember, bring your
You
wife.
never know. You never know.
Yeah,
Like,
I'll send you the link to the chapel. It's like alarm heaven. But joking apart, because we're actually doing the gathering now in January next year.
okay.
We managed to pull it off this year without Mike, which, you know, when you if you talk about grief and you talk about stress, I mean,
Hmm.
I felt so overwhelmed at the thought of putting the gathering on. Just I didn't even have the desire to do it, you know. I always had the desire, but
Yeah.
I knew I had to keep dragging myself forwards for the sake of everyone else. But now my desire is back, and January I would like to mention that in Rhyl, which is where Mike was born, well, he was born in
Hmm.
our village of Dizeth, but he spent his formative years near the beach in Rhyl, North Wales. And the council have just built a brand new concert venue and they have named it the Mike Peters Arena. So
Oh,
guess where we're
wow.
having the gathering? Yeah, we're having the gathering next January at the Mike Peters Arena. And so we're building our strength and we're adding everyone to the bill. And Evan will be leading the way like he did this year. But that is for me. There's a statue of Mike on the beach in Rhyl. I feel re-energized and determined, and I'll never be afraid myself to smash things down and build them back up. But I will always, forevermore, protect the legacy of Mike Peters and honor his philosophy, his passion for life, the way he was kind to Alarm fans. He always had time for everyone, and that's what we as the Peters family are determined to continue. So we hope that we will also bring the gathering back to New York because Mike was very, very excited and passionate about the New York gathering. It's something we've only started in latterly in the last
Yeah.
5 or 6 years, but they were so successful, and we're so grateful if you're listening in, so
Yeah.
grateful to the Alarm family in America for always being there for us, always with a big hug and a smile and support. So I like to think aim high, aim for the stars, see if we can come over once we've sorted our visas out with the wonderful administration um, and make sure that we could try and keep building on all of Mike's hopes and dreams.
That would be great. I'd love to pop into the Mute to see it, the New York one. But I
Yeah,
want to thank you. This is fantastic. Once again, people, the album, support it, keep it
thank
going,
you,
and
Stephen.
support everything. Go to the website, bookmark it, go to this subscribe and support all the links and keep it going. Jules, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sean. Thank you for being my grief counselor today.
Yeah, for today, right? You take care. Thank you.
Take care, darling.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Take
Bye.
care.